Listen, it is costing you when you choose to be relatable and acceptable versus you choosing to be magical. Let's just jump right in today's episode on the Unleash the Alchemy show. Okay, so here's what I want to tell you first. Do not believe for 1 second that people that you see that are in the forefront, in the limelight, people that in today's society would be considered uber successful, extremely successful. Don't believe for 1 second that there's not one of those successful people that have not used or they are currently using some form of magic. Don't believe for 1 second that there is not at least one of those people who have tapped in to an ancient spiritual system, that have tapped into metaphysics, that have tapped into the occult, that has influenced their success. All right, let's keep going. So listen, we know that there are successful people all over the world, all right, that literally worked hard to achieve their success. Okay. So what does that working hard look like? Sleepless nights, maybe some tears, perhaps no money, some homeless. Okay. They struggled for a very long time to achieve the success that they have now. Okay. And in those situations, it is safe to say that their hard work paid off, right? Okay. Which is true for some of those people. Okay. Hard work, especially to that level, it can produce favorable results. And yet we also know that is not the case for everyone who is working hard or who has worked hard. Okay. So we see people teaching online about acceptable business strategies. We see people teaching online telling you that they have the perfect blueprint for you to follow to be successful in whatever business you have, or giving you a blueprint for you to be successful in life. Okay. And let's say that you have attempted some of these blueprints and perhaps you have seen results. Okay. You may have even tried some of the blueprints, and maybe you've said before, why does it seem that success comes so easy for some people, but yet you haven't seen the results, the same results? Okay. I'm bringing this up for a reason, so just stick with me. There are many people that are engaging in spiritual work, but they are not telling you that. They are giving you what is accepted. They are giving you an accepted strategy in order to be relatable, in order to be acceptable. Okay? They are giving you a strategy that sounds realistic and it fits into a box, rather than being honest and telling you that spiritual work is the backbone of their success. Now, when I say this, am I telling you that every single person, every single successful person that you see, that they have to share the fact that they are doing spiritual work? Is a person required to tell you that? No. I'm sharing this with you for you to be aware so that you are not comparing yourself to anyone. And I'm also telling you this because some of you that have stepped out of religion, you are still allowing fear to cloud your spiritual science. You have an affinity to practice certain spiritual practices, but yet fear is knocking you off the rails. You are allowing fear to knock you off the rails because still in the back of your mind, you're trying to be relatable. You're trying to do what you deem to be or what you have programmed to believe is acceptable versus being magical. And it is costing you. What is it costing you? It is costing you the fullness of you to experience life as a sovereign being. There's a fullness and completeness that comes with that. So let's just keep going. I got off the rails for a second. Okay. So back to success, and I'm using the image of success. I'm using that as an example that can be applied to anything. So going back to successful people. Now, whether they are doing the spiritual work themselves or if they have someone else doing the work for them, the point is spiritual work is being done and they are not telling you about it. They're just giving you this acceptable construct. This is what happens in many churches every single week and every Sunday. Okay. So then you have, before I get into that, I want to tell you this. Then you have groups of people that are not necessarily connected to a religion or not necessarily connected to a church, or at least they don't share that. But you have groups of successful people who use religious speech. They use religious terms. They use religious words to disguise their work. Again, making the true work, the true backbone of their business, their magic, to make it sound acceptable to the masses. Because it is a risk. It is a risk to come out and say, well, this is what I do. Yes, I have this business. Yes, you see, it is successful, but this is a ritual that I do every week for business. You know what I love? You know what comes up? And I absolutely love them. I subscribe to their channel, the Conjure family. And I'm going to say her name wrong. Lala Anutiahari. The Conjure family. Well, her candle business that she had was called the Conjure. Now, along with her 3 daughters. Now, it was a risk for all 4 of those women to put themselves out there to say, yes, this is what we do in our lives. We are spiritual practitioners. This is what we do every day. So they brought their practice to the masses. Now, they've told us a lot. If you are familiar with them, I encourage you to look them up. They've told us a lot about what they do. Have they shared everything? I don't know. No one will know. But we know that they have made their spiritual backbone, their spiritual practice out in the open because it is the backbone of their lives. It is their life. Just like brushing their teeth, their practice is a part of their lives. Okay? So they're not covering what they do up using religious terms to make people feel comfortable, to be accepted. They chose to be magical. All right. So that's an example that kept coming up. So I wanted to address that. So again, we have people that you see that are, again, they're not connected to any religion. They're not connected to any church, but you hear them using religious phrases, religious speech, religious words, because they know that that is acceptable to the masses. They are not taking the risk to say, hey, this is part of my spiritual science, and this is what I do. Instead, they give you a strategy. Instead, they give you these religious words and terms, okay? So, like I said before, this is what happens in churches. If we talked about the number of pastors, preachers, ministers, whatever they call themselves, that engage in conjure, that engage in hoodoo, that engage in voodoo, that are root workers, that are candle workers, that perform rituals in a full moon, it might knock you off your ass. You would be very surprised, or perhaps not. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, because what I saw growing up in church, that was a form of magic, but they called it something else, okay, to make it acceptable. Now, so there are many preachers that are familiar with metaphysics, with the occult. They're very familiar with the origins of the Bible. They're very familiar with the origins of religion and its political foundation and the whole construct of religion to control the masses. They're very familiar with that. Yet, to keep the attention of the masses and the money, they continue on with those limiting stories, though they keep feeding people with those same Bible stories. They keep feeding people with the constructs. They keep feeding people with the dogma because they want to be accepted and relatable versus being magical. And you know what's so interesting about this? I'm going to say this. I didn't plan on talking about this, but I'm going to say this. What's so interesting about that is when you talk with, I know I keep referencing the Bible, which is a book of magic and metaphysics, but we'll say that for another episode. But what is interesting is that the main character in the Bible, some say Jesus, I say Yahshua. Yahshua was an individual who understood metaphysics. He never talked about a religion. Yahshua never talked about a church. I feel that Yahshua, if Yahshua was a real person, Yahshua went and studied in the ancient mystery schools. He went and studied metaphysics. And he brought his studies back to say, hey, look, we are all of infinite intelligence. We are all multipliers. We are healers. We have power of healing within us. We have power of creation within us. We are divine. We are gods and goddesses. So away with the churches, away with religion. We are the temple. That's what he was trying to get people to understand. So when you look at that, and when you look at how people are still trying to be relatable, the two do not go together. Because if these people understood the Bible, then they would know that sharing their magic is the divine thing to do. That sharing their spiritual science with other people and saying, hey, this is the ritual that I do every Tuesday at 9 p.m. for this matter, that was what Yahshua, if we reference the Bible, that is what that individual was trying to show everybody. Get it? Okay. So why do you need to know this? Why am I sharing this with you? Because you need to begin to embrace your own spiritual technology. You need to begin to embrace your own spiritual science and how you came here to practice. All right? How you came here to be. You need to know this so that you can operate in your spiritual gifts with complete confidence instead of allowing fear to keep you from yourself. All right? You need to know this so that you can embrace your role as an energetic pioneer And so that you can allow the spiritual wisdom that is encoded in your DNA to be fully expressed. Why do you need to know this? So that you can pick up the spiritual work where your ancestors left off. All right? That is why I'm sharing this with you. No more allowing fear to keep you from being fully immersed in your spirituality. I don't care if it's your candle work, marines, working with marine spirits. I don't care if it's full moon magic, plant magic, herbal magic. Whatever you have, and you start with, and you may be saying, well, how do I know what my magic is? How do I know what my spiritual technology is? How do I know what my spiritual science is? A part of that is you have to ask yourself, well, what do you have in affinity toward? Is it going out in nature, working with the elements? Then you start there. You start there. On a windy day, go out and let the wind smack you in the face. It can be just as simple as that. All right. So to know and to help you embrace who you are as a sovereign being, to help you uncover your own spiritual technology and your spiritual science, to see the blind spots of how religious programming has kept you from yourself, I want you to book a call with me for one-on-one sessions. Okay. I have a 24 session package where I help people see the blind spots of how programming has operated in their nervous system. And we focus on allowing our sovereign identity to be uncovered and to be expressed so that we can see enchantments in every single part of our lives. That's what I help you with. All right. So I want you to check that out. There's more information on my website, unleashedalchemy.com. I have courses and I have books that are also transformative tools that will help you. All right. As you begin to operate in your sovereignty with complete confidence. Okay. So until next time, be sovereign.